Baroness Hamwood.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, it's clearly regrettable that the Immigration Advisory Services Trustees have decided to place the organisation in administration. However, the IAS is one provider in a wider market of immigration and asylum advice. The Legal Services Commission is identifying alternative provision for the areas affected, as well as making the necessary arrangements for case transfers.
My Lords, the IAS had almost 25,000 new cases last year, of which 8,500 were asylum cases, and it leaves about 10,000 live cases. What assurances can the government give, firstly, to clients, especially those whose cases are at a critical time-limited point, and who need information about what will happen next in their own languages? And secondly, with regard to practical matters, including the number of staff retained by the administrators to deal with such things as the transfer of files. My noble friend will know that a year after the closure of refugee and migrant justice, many files are still in storage, with the storage company looking for payment before the cases can proceed.
The IAS was audited, and the Legal Services Commission identified potential overclaims representing millions of pounds, and that's what's led to this train of events. The LSC is working very hard to transfer cases, prioritising the most vulnerable first, and among them cases of unaccompanied children claiming asylum, and those cases that are coming up to tribunal immediately. There are a large number of people working in this area who are prepared to take on this work, which is very encouraging for making a smooth transfer of this and making sure that clients are well looked after in this situation.
Isn't there a danger, though, that with the cutback of money for legal aid, it is not possible for other organisations to fill the gap left by the Immigration Advisory Service? And isn't the real problem that will be left, particularly with asylum seekers, caught in a limbo and possibly becoming destitute because there's nobody to represent them properly?
This is a problem in IAS. IAS itself projected that they would have a return of a profit of £500,000 even with the proposed legal aid reforms. It isn't an issue about legal aid reforms. It's a problem in IAS, and it's a large debt that they can't address and which the Legal Services Commission has decided should not be written off. There are many other organisations that are wanting to take on this work, and I'll quote Carolyn Downs, the Chief Executive of the Legal Services Commission, who said in the other place yesterday, "We have a huge number of people contacting us who are prepared to take on that work."
Chief Executive of the Refugee Council, could the noble lady the Minister assure the House that the quality of specialist immigration law that will be available in the future will be as good as in the past? Is she aware of the differential success rates of people getting very good legal advice? And would she accept that removing immigration law from scope and cutting the budget for legal aid for asylum may actually make that harder? I'm sure most noble lords wouldn't dream of buying a house without decent legal advice. Certainly no one should be forced to defend their life without it.
The Legal Services Commission puts a certain threshold to demand the kind of quality that the noble lady is talking about. That continues to be the case, and we are encouraged by the fact that there are a large number of providers willing to take on this work, which helps drive up the quality.
Minister ensure that every case that is currently with the IAS is transferred to a competent provider of legal advice and representation. I think she's already indicated that she'll make sure that happens. But further, due to the government's proposals in the bill that all immigration cases, except where individuals are in detention, are to be outside the scope of legal aid, including cases of domestic violence, this means that in every case, however complicated, no legal advice under legal aid will be available. Does she not, as someone with a proud liberal reputation, not feel more than a little uncomfortable in depriving people of access to justice in this way?
How very kind of the noble lord. To address his first point, there will be 3 IAS hub centres kept open for the moment in Manchester, Birmingham, Bradford, which are facilitating the transfer of these cases. And I'm sure that we will have very interesting debates coming down the track on legal aid, but this is not to do with those proposed changes.
Lord, can my noble friend say how many IAS staff will be retained in the 3 offices that she's just mentioned to deal with the transfer of the files, and whether she considers that they will be able to do it adequately, bearing in mind that, as my noble friend has already said, that there are still files that have not been transferred after the demise of the RMJ, when they've had over a year to do it. Could I also ask my noble friend, does she agree that the number of matter starts given to the IAS was so large that they couldn't, in fact, be taken up by other practitioners, especially in regions like East Anglia and Yorkshire, where the IAS has either 100% or most of the legal aid and asylum cases? Not to.
Well, I disagree with what my noble friend says about there not being the adequate provision potentially in place. I'm very encouraged by what the Chief Executive of the Legal Services Commission has said. In terms of the transfer of files, it does seem that this is a better organised situation than was the case in the previous case that he refers to, and we are confident that this will be taken forward in a very effective way.